Hello, everybody. Hello to everybody in the chat. Hello to everybody not in the chat. If you're catching this on the replay, hello to you. Hip, hip, hooray. It is a cult-free day, which means it is a fabulous day for me and all of you. Because if you are here, you are likely not in a cult. Or maybe you are, and you'll find ways to escape and get out. I'm Natalie. This is Scientology Life After a Cult, where I share what happened to 3 generations of my family during our 35 years in Scientology, but most importantly, how we got out and what life has been like afterwards. We're going to talk about a lot of things today. We're going to talk about what happened last night in Clearwater, Florida. We're going to talk about what happened in Hollywood, and we're going to talk about the Scientologist mindset behind this. Make sure that if you have not, please subscribe to the channel. If it's your first time here, welcome. Everybody who's returning, it's great to have you here again. And again, make sure if you like the video as we go along, that you go ahead and hit the like button as well. And thank you to the moderators that are helping me out today. It's just so great, so great to see everybody, even though I can't see you, but I know you're there. So good morning. Hey, Dip Me in Glitter and Nancy, again, thank you. Good morning, Trisha. Meerkat. Hey, you're catching me live. Yes, that's fantastic. Ria, yes, I hope you have another amazing day as well. Tamara H, good morning. Me and Taz, aloha to you as well. Mike, good morning from North Carolina. Beans Brown, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. So great to have all of you here. I appreciate you so much. All right. Let's talk about a couple of things. Let's see. I think where we're going to kick this off. First off, I want to make sure that you know the videos that I'm going to be talking about today are in the description of this video, along with a call to action on what you can do if you'd like to help strip Scientology of their tax-exempt status and get law enforcement to do something about what's happening. That is in the description, and I'll bring that up a couple times during our little hang here today. And if you have questions, if you could put in all caps the word question in front of it, I'm going to try and grab those towards the end too, your questions and comments, so we can take those up. But if you put the word question in front of it in all caps, then I can find it real easy, and I would appreciate that. So thanks for your help with that. All right, let's start off in Hollywood, at the Hollywood Testing Center in California, in front of the Scientology, what they call Life Improvement Center. There for over a month now, William Good of Scientology Audit, Streets LA, Jessica Palmadessa from TikTok and YouTube, Confident Chris, and more and more and more. And so many other people show up each day to hold Scientology accountable, to show the world what's happening there, and mostly to prevent people from being able to fall prey to this cult in the first place. And they have had shenanigans. There have been so many shenanigans, and we cover those in earlier videos, and it continues. But I got to say this, I think that Scientology finally did one thing that makes sense. They closed the window coverings at the Hollywood Testing Center. You can still see in, but I don't know why they didn't do that earlier. I mean, I guess it's good for us, right? We got to see so much more of what was happening inside there, where now you can still see inside. It's just not as obvious. But you'd think like day one, would they not have done that? But no, they did not. They still had the door open at times. You know, they open and close it. Interestingly, they often will close the door right before something goes down. I think a few people have brought that up in the chat and in the comments as well, that you've noticed that too. So that's something to keep an eye out for when they do close the door. Because how do they know that something's going to go down? Is it coincidental? Maybe. Did they have something to do with what goes down? Maybe. That's what we're here to figure out. And thankfully, there are so many people showing up to live stream what's happening. Tourists are continuing to show up on Hollywood Boulevard to watch this all play out. Even families, people drinking coffee, people eating. It's amazing. I cannot tell you how trippy it is to see this play out like this, especially as an ex-Scientologist. I didn't think the day would ever come. You spend so much time, I think, in Scientology. And in the past, there were people who turned whistleblower and would share about Scientology and what was happening within Scientology, the crimes, the abuses, the human rights violations, and not really feel heard. And today you get to see it. You're seeing it play out. You're seeing the tactics that they use. And I think that is a beautiful thing. I think that the internet is one of the best things to ever happen to this movement of exposing Scientology and assisting in getting their tax exempt status taken away. Now, in Hollywood at the testing center, a lot of you might know Solomon, who's a teenage kid who shows up after school and is he's very inspired by what's happening to raise awareness about Scientology and the abuses. Unfortunately, Scientology has decided that when William is out there alone after school, that's a great time to call him names. So they've been going after this kid who, again, I think he's like 16 years old, who's out there for after school. He's there for hours, who is becoming a crowd favorite, especially here on the internet. People have raised money to help get him a body cam so these things can be recorded as well when he's out there, especially alone. And he did the sweetest thing. He reached out to William Good, who's Streets LA, who's from the channel Scientology Audit, Streets LA, and he offered that he wanted to donate to the cause. That's just so touching. I love this kid. I just love this kid. And what I love too is the way that people there stand up for him. Yesterday, William Good gave Scientology a piece of his mind and what he thought about how they're going ahead and name calling this teenage kid when he's alone. It's such bullying tactics. They're such bullies, and it is not going to work because it's all going to be caught on video. It's all going to be shared, and more people are finding out what Scientology really is and really is about. Yesterday, William also gave them a piece of his mind all over again about the false bomb threat that Scientology called in some days ago. It had interesting timing because it was right before the Rolling Stones article came out, and it really looked like Scientology was trying to do that, maybe with the hopes that this bomb threat got included in the article, because one of the Scientology tactics is to paint themselves as the victim, to hide behind this idea of religious persecution as if that's what it's about. It is not about that. Believe what you want. Practice Scientology. But knock off the human rights abuses, knock off the breaking up of families, the disconnection policy. We can go on and on and on. It's not about that. Believe what you want to believe. If you want to go the whole Xenu route and get rid of your body thetans, power to you. It's the abuses that occur within the organization and the way they carry these things out and react to people who have questions about Scientology, like everybody standing outside the testing center. Also last night, Snotman, I should say formerly known as Snotman, the internet has given him a new name, and it is Spit Shady. He is the guy who showed up some days ago, identified himself as a Scientologist and supporting Scientology, then went on one of the craziest rants we have ever seen. He homophobic slurs. He blew his nose on William, just unhinged, and he was arrested and taken away. He showed up last night, but before that, he reached out to Jessica Palmadessa, who's on TikTok and YouTube, and I've linked to her video in the description of this one, and let her know that he's going to be there and alluded to something big happening. Now, as far as I can tell, nothing happened. He seemed to just pace, almost frantically walk by, hiding with his hoodie and his hat cocked halfway and spitting repeatedly onto the sidewalk. I am not a fan of spitting or people who spit on public sidewalks, but I don't know what he thinks he's doing. And then it comes out, it gets shared that this same guy, right, Spit Shady, reached out to a 16-year-old girl. I think it was through Instagram. It was through a social media platform, and said some pretty disgusting and perverted things that we're not going to repeat. And there he is again. And I do believe he asked, I don't know if his intention in being there was to ask William if William would drop the charges against him. And if I heard right, you correct me in the chat or the comments if I'm wrong, but I thought I heard that William said he would drop the charges. Need to kind of confirm that, but you tell me if you heard the same thing or something different in the chat. But this guy's not well. He is not well, regardless of what his affiliation is to Scientology. He was seen earlier dancing on his car. I don't know if he's doing this just to get attention, but he definitely does not seem to be well. Mindy made an appearance. She brought a step ladder. You guys might remember her. Some people were suspicious of her being a Scientology plant or not. I think she's lovely. I think she's friendly. I'm not worried about her. Frankly, I'm not worried about anybody. If you're there, you're showing up, you're being friendly and cool. You got to take people at face value there. And yeah, it was good to see her out. She brought a step ladder so people could see over the fence. And more people are showing up too, just to watch this play out. Families, tourists, just standing on the side, watching things go down. And even with the blinds, with the window coverings down, you can still see inside. And the doors are open. There aren't coverings over the window, so you can still see what's happening. And Scientology is still adding to the party by playing music, which really just ups the energy and makes it feel even more like a party. I'm just still like, why are you guys doing that? But keep doing it because it's great. I think it really adds to it. Now, here's how you can help no matter where you are, especially in the United States. In the description of this video are links to how to contact your elected officials wherever you are and what you can ask them. Do they think that Scientology should still have their tax exempt status? Educate them on these human rights abuses and what has been happening, and make them answer the question. Should they or shouldn't they? And then share that question on social media. Tag them. There is a lot of accountability in doing that and reaching out to your elected officials because they can create change and no longer, they can't claim ignorance because you've made them aware of what's happening. And a lot of them already know anyways. Scientology has been doing shady things since its inception. Let's not forget, this is the religion who was raided by the FBI, one of the largest FBI raids in history in the 70s. And it got found out that Scientology had committed one of the largest infiltrations of the United States government in history. These are the people that we're talking about, the things that they've done. Google it. It's all over the internet. So last night in Hollywood, I thought was pretty cool. Those are kind of the highlights of what went down. If I missed something that you think should be pointed out, go ahead and share it in the comments. If you're on the replay, share it in the comments as well. Share it in the chat if you're here now. Now let's talk about Clearwater for a minute. Clearwater, Florida, the home of the Flag land base. This is where the highest levels of the bridge to total freedom are delivered. And Aaron Smith-Levin from Growing Up in Scientology is shutting them down. He got out there yesterday. This was so funny. When he first shows up, he showed up first. He went out during the day and was in a vehicle driving around. And you could see like, oh, wow, there are Scientologists out there walking around the buildings. Mostly they look like Sea Organization members. I didn't really see that many people that weren't in uniform. And there were many of them as he's driving around. He had a hat and glasses on in the beginning, and you can tell they didn't know he was there. But what happens as soon as security, because there's cameras everywhere, as soon as he gets out of the car and starts walking around, live streaming all of this on his channel, Growing Up in Scientology, and I've linked to that as well in the description, what happens? They scatter. Like when you turn a light on and there's roaches and they just boom, scatter, they're gone. That is the solution to somebody like Aaron showing up, who is a suppressive person. We're going to talk a little bit more about that mindset and why Scientology does this. But it was amazing to see it play out where all these people are there. Then when he gets out of the car, comes around the corner, boom, 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 they're gone. Now, here's the cool thing that happened yesterday. There was a local resident who was chatting with Aaron, and the guy didn't even know that who Aaron was, that he had the channel Growing Up in Scientology. He just watched what happened when Aaron was out on the street. And what he said, what he witnessed was Aaron would walk by. Anybody in front, they'd be like running, like going and scattering into the buildings. And then when they'd be behind Aaron, security would send people out like 10 at a time to leave and go into another building where they needed to be. And then if Aaron turned around and went the other way, the same thing happened behind him. It's It's hilarious. And this guy watched it all play out. He was totally there for that. Like 10 at a time, they would let him out and then go into another building. And this is because Scientology gives a tremendous amount of power to what they call a suppressive person, someone they have deemed to be a suppressive person. And that's why there's so many people who are um, now sharing their stories under the banner of SPTV, Suppressive Person Television. And what I've not understood completely, I guess I understand it because I know Scientology often is the land of things are just upside down and backwards. And what you think that they should be doing would make sense. They do the opposite because I'm convinced that they have meetings each day to discuss how they can be as culty as possible and then follow through with that and that behavior. And they keep their members in a state of fight or flight, kind of electrified and in fear about people who just have questions about Scientology or ex-members who've been declared a suppressive person. And they really, I don't know if they realize that they're giving so much power to people who've left Scientology or people who have questions about Scientology, people who are critical about Scientology, so much that they won't let members communicate. They won't let them have a conversation about Scientology. As soon as they see someone do that, they whisk them away. And you saw this on in Clearwater yesterday. Aaron walked up to two gentlemen who I think they were both Sea Organization members. I'm not 100% sure. And he was asking people, hey, when is the command team firing out to Paris and to, I forget where the other place was. Oh, Austin. And a command team in Scientology is a Sea Organization mission that gets sent out when these ideal organization events are done. They're big ribbon cutting and opening. When David Miscavage is there, they send out a whole team ahead of time. And when you walk up to somebody and you word it like that, you're pretty much, that's kind of a way of it sounds like, it doesn't sound like Aaron is doing it in a way that he is antagonistic towards Scientology. So they actually had a little bit of conversation about it. And you could tell off camera, someone was waving these guys away because you could see the guy look away and then they started walking away because you can't have a conversation. You have to hide and scatter. It really is something to behold and to witness and to see. Because the sad thing is, Scientology tells its members that people who've been declared as suppressive people, or who Scientology calls squirrels, people they say are out there altering Scientology or sharing about Xenu and body thetans, Scientology has their members convinced that if they hear any of this, that it will spiritually damage them. And then the Scientologist has to pay to get that fixed, has to pay for the interrogation, has to pay for their own reprogramming. And if you're a Sea Organization member, that can also include punishment like manual labor, sleep deprivation, food deprivation. If you get into a situation where you're witness speaking to or interacting with somebody who's been declared a suppressive person. And if they've got nothing to hide, why can't they just talk about it? Why the runaway? Why hide them from any message that someone might have who's opposed to Scientology? I'll tell you why. Because this stuff works. Going out and raising awareness and educating people about Scientology and the human rights abuses, that works. Many Scientologists are good people who don't know about a lot of what's happening within Scientology because you're not allowed to read anything or listen to anything that is against Scientology. And if you do, you get in absolute huge trouble for it. And let's see, I want to see let's see if we got a couple questions and what your guys' thoughts are on some of this so far. Mike saying, when I was in Ybor City, I think that's how you say it, Ybor, years back when younger, would mess with the free stress test folks when they used to be out there. Yeah, they're kind of used to that, I think, because they still do it. They still go out and try to recruit with the free stress tests, or they'd have one of their e-meters out where they would do what they call pinch tests, where they'd have somebody hold on to the cans for the e-meter, which puts a small current through your body. And Scientology says that when you're trained in reading the different needle reactions, that it can help you to interrogate somebody or help them find dates and times of things in their Scientology counseling. And what they do is they pinch the person while showing them the meter, and the needle would make a certain reaction. And then they would ask the person to recall the pinch. So to recall the pinch, and in recalling the pinch, the needle would react in a similar way. And that was their idea of proving how that worked. And they still do it. They still do it, as far as I know. Brisby Tail says, Aaron needs a SEAL team too. They linger to see what happens when Aaron passes by. That's a great idea to even get that, right? Get that on camera, because it is something to behold. I've seen it in person at different Scientology organizations, but also seeing it online in real time is so interesting as well, to see what they do, to see how they run away. Rune, those Sea Org members on Hollywood Boulevard are looking to get their claws into Solomon. I know. It's creepy. It really is. It looked to me, what I could gather last night on Hollywood Boulevard is Solomon went home because the snot guy, Spit Shady, had said some things earlier that just, are kind of unnerving. And Solomon is only a kid at the end of the day. And I think people do a good job of protecting him and keeping an eye on him. And I think what he's doing is really brave. This is something that he's inspired by, and he's pursuing it. I think it's great that they keep an eye on him. Demkid Man, I know their reasons for playing music, but I was wondering about their choice of music. I would expect Scientology to play classical music. Yeah, and obviously it's a paid subscription to something or a downloaded playlist, because you don't hear commercials. How funny would that be, right? If they had they were using a streaming service that wasn't paid, and you'd also hear the commercials. But I guess at least they have that. It's not, it's not, it is, I enjoy the music, but I am curious, who curates the playlist? Do these songs need to be approved by Scientology ahead of time? I'm curious about that. That's what I'd like to know. What if maybe we could help them out with a playlist and some suggestions? Because can't you on some streaming platforms create a playlist and share it with other people? Maybe there's a better playlist. What music do you think they should be playing? Tell me in the comments. I'd like to know. Drive-in fan, if there were teams videoing each side of the building in Clearwater, it would disrupt their programs. Yeah, because it's like, where they're going to go, right? You go this way because you think that Aaron and company is over there, but then there's another one over here. We're seeing that start to play out in Hollywood. There are more people live streaming at Celebrity Center, where the Manor Hotel is in Hollywood, or at the Blue Buildings. Now, the Blue Buildings in Hollywood is where the Church of Scientology of Los Angeles is located. On Hollywood Boulevard, that's their testing center, their recruitment center, but they're still recruiting out by the Blue Building. You'll see them out by the hospitals. Wanderer, why does Scientology want places like Clearwater to be empty? Well, so that they can do what they do and be culty without prying eyes. Scientology will say, like in they outright, L. Harbin put it in writing, that the aims of Scientology is to have a world without war, without insanity, without crime. I mean, who doesn't want that? That sounds like a desirable thing, right? And that's why that's one of the things when you first go in, they're like, oh, these are our goals at these fake Sunday services that they do sometimes, which I'm telling you, I was in Scientology for 35 years. These Sunday services they claim to do are a complete fraud. They're only done for public relations. In St. Paul, where I live in the Twin Cities, they would only do them if some Scientology VIP was coming in, or, to do a tour to make it look like it's churchy. It's not something that Scientologists actually do beyond doing it for what they value, which is public relations. So there are other Scientology buildings and businesses owned by Scientologists that service Scientology. Scientology is okay with them being there, but they don't want the prying eyes and seeing, because how many people talk about how weird it is with the Sea Organization members in their uniforms going here and there, heads down, not being friendly. That's what people talk about. So the solution, rather than let them just act like normie people outside of Scientology because they can't. Scientology has a mindset. Scientology has a look in the eyes because of the training that they do. And they think that's how they need to show up outside of Scientology in a way that's very robotic. So rather than create people or encourage people to be free and communicate, which is what they claim to do, right? Instead, it's the opposite. They just remove the rest of the world and want to create their own world and community that can be like that. So no one questions when they lock people up. So no one questions when they won't let them out to go to the store. When my daughter Shelby was training in Florida, where Aaron is doing these videos from, they weren't allowed to go out at certain times if there were protesters there. They had to stay inside. When you can't even walk past people who are questioning your religion, it's like, why? Why? And Scientologists know better than to ask too many questions that start with why, because then they have to pay for it, for their own reprogramming, for their own interrogation. Mrs. Valentine, you crack me up. She's talking about Tampa Couch Brad. That's a whole other thing. Oh my gosh. Steve Kahn. Hey, Steve. He says, I saw that last night with Aaron. Yes. It's crazy to see. It really is. You got to see it. And like I said, I linked to the video in this description, and I'm so glad that he's doing this. Be Kind says, Granny G, although I was worried about Spit Shady with a knife and mental health issues. Yeah, some people, this was in Hollywood, were saying that Spit Shady, the guy who blew his nose and has just been acting incredibly bizarre, that guy is trouble. People were saying that they thought that he had a knife again as well, which I believe he was found with when he got arrested. Hello, people from Ontario and different places. Not that Helen, all their juvenile tactics, playing hide and seek, all the total weirdness. I hope they know that we see them all the way here in Australia. It's truly amazing. Right? If they weren't doing the whole hide and seek thing, it wouldn't look as bizarre. But this is what I'm saying by when I say they get together each morning and come up with a plan to look as culty as possible. This is how it looks. And Scientology has a branch in Scientology called the Office of Special Affairs, where they monitor YouTube channels, media, all these things coming out about Scientology. It's not like they don't know that the vast majority of people outside of Scientology are calling them out on this behavior and pointing out how bizarre it is. Yet they continue to do the same thing and expect a different result, which, as we know, is the definition of insanity. If you keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, and you do it over and over and over again, what is that? But they have to do this because they're operating off of the dictates of L. Ron Hubbard. And in Scientology, you have to follow to the letter, to the line, what L. Ron Hubbard says. Unless, the only caveat to this is unless David Miscavage, the dictator Dave, says otherwise. Because he has outright done things in Scientology that are actually contrary to what L. Ron Hubbard said. And people are still following it because of the way he does it, his propaganda machine. It's like North Korea in Scientology. There's tons of propaganda. There's tons of propaganda videos. There's tons of printed propaganda material, all about painting this picture for Scientologists that Scientology is winning and expanding. Because remember, in Scientology, if the squirrels are out there, if the suppressive people are out there, we're winning. When the criticism of Scientology increases, we're winning. I would hate to see what happens or happen if they're actually losing, if they thought they were losing. Because each time, E-bar. Okay, not Y-bar, E-bar. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for letting me know, Monica. E-bar. It's crazy. Demkid man, can Scientologists read regular novels and magazine? Okay, so here's how that works. If you are an everyday parishioner, right? You can, as long as you're not reading anything that is anti-Scientology or against a Scientologist. So any article about Tom Cruise and his crazy antics, you because it paints Scientology in a bad light, you would not be able to read that. There are books that regular parishioners also, I mean, Scientology back in my day had a banned book list. You couldn't read the book The Secret. And there were multiple other ones. Any of my under the radar or ex Scientologists in the chat or in the comments, go ahead and if you remember any of those banned books, put them in there because I definitely remember The Secret being one of them, but I know there were multiple ones. Now, the higher you go up in, there's regular Scientology parishioners. Then there's staff members who work at places like the Church of Scientology Los Angeles or the Church of Scientology in the Twin Cities. You live on your own. You're not living in Scientology housing, though they often live together somewhere to save money because they don't make any money in Scientology. Scientology staff members have to have another job to support themselves. In the Sea Organization, which is where you sign a billion-year contract, they provide housing and food. So you don't work outside of there to support yourself. But staff members, and they're called staff members, at Scientology churches all over the place, Scientology organizations, have to have another job to support themselves because they don't have room and board. They live on their own. So they're also more likely to be a little bit more exposed to what's happening outside of Scientology, but they are still indoctrinated not to read it, not to look, not to listen, not to see. Keep those Scientology blinders on. And when they do, they get in big trouble for it. In the Sea Organization, it's even stricter. No, you cannot even, no magazines, no newspapers, no television. Uh, you're not allowed to have televisions in the Sea Organization. You're definitely not going to be streaming anything on the internet too, where it could expose you to Scientology. There was a time back in the day, and again, my ex-Scientology people, tell me in the chat or in the comments. Do you remember they put software on our computers? They handed out these discs and they claimed that it was to protect us in some way or somehow help Scientology, and really it blocked things on your computer so you couldn't see them about Scientology. Anyone remember that from back in the day? Let me know. This is the kind of stuff that they do. I don't know what they do now because, who's got a thing to put a CD into their computer anymore? Not me. I need a thing to add on to it to be able to do that. I don't even know what it's called. Listen to me. That's why I say I'm Gen X, but sometimes I have boomer tendencies when it comes to, I know enough about technology to be dangerous, but I'm always like, what was that called? Oh my gosh, you guys are so funny. Right. Monica, it's so nice to have your daily recap. It's very helpful because there's so much to watch and it's hard sometimes to know what's really happening. I'm right there with you. I try to catch as much as I can. My email is natalie@tonkatalk.com. If you guys catch things, you got links to videos and timestamps, by all means, send them to me and I'll get it included in a recap. Or if you have questions on certain behaviors, you want to understand that Scientology mindset more, let me know and I'll address those as well in videos because I pretty much go live every day. And I want to hear what your questions are and what you think about it. And be sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video as well if you like it. Cardi, thank you. I really love how you break down why they are doing things they do. And I feel it often needs to be repeated because you see this behavior from the outside, right? We're seeing these videos. We're seeing Scientologists run away. We're seeing that Chris without a Hellcat goes to the blue buildings. He's gone to the Celebrity Center to interview Scientologists. And you see Scientology security show up on their bikes and try and push them away and try and get the Scientologists moved away. He did an interview with a Scientologist, an older woman named Jean, who shared that she had been out and away from Scientology for years and had just come back into the fold, which you could tell because that was the only reason she was talking to Chris without a Hellcat and answering his questions. She didn't know better. Well, what happened? Scientologist came up and whisked her right away. Some people have asked, how does Scientology know they're talking to these people around these different Scientology bases? It's the cameras. They have cameras everywhere. In fact, I'm not aware of are you aware of another church that has this level, this many cameras? I'm not. I'm definitely not. They're everywhere. And this is how they know. They know that people who are live streaming, people who are protesting, different activists, they know that they're going over there because a lot of times it's they talk about it on the live streams. So you know what I wish, because we know that the Office of Special Affairs has to watch all of these things. If they could do me a solid and just send me a recap of just what, their highlights, that would be super helpful. Because then you guys have teams of people watching all this. It would be so much easier. Help a girl out. Maybe we could send them back and forth even. If I have a recap and give it to you, and we can just kind of, double time this because it is a lot of content to watch and keep up on. I hope they do that, but I don't know. All right, Cindy. Well, they do want to attract young people, right? Yes, absolutely. That's part of their game. It's why they use younger Scientologists at the testing center as trying to have them as the face of Scientology. And because like attracts like, and they need more young people. You remember when the Scientology Karens showed up after that email went out from Scientology saying, hey, we're going to use TikTok against them, which I thought it was so cute that they misspelled TikTok. We're going to use TikTok against them. Bring your video, keep your training routines in, because TRs in Scientology are training routines that they do from childhood to create a person who can not flinch when they're being confronted, so they can confront and shatter that suppression. Really, all they do is run away. Ram Omegawan. I'm totally butchering that, and I'm sorry. It sounds like all the Scientology members are not focused problematic from the beginning, and they only think that they could fix this is by forcefully playing a role play. I'm not totally tracking, but I think I kind of know what you're saying. They're not focused. They're not focused on the problems or the criticisms. In Scientology, the way they get people in is by doing these personality tests and showing people, hey, this is ruining your life, that you're not a great communicator or that you're introverted. And Scientology can help you with that. They pull personal information out of you so that you feel really bad about what's going on and the option in front of you. Basically, they gaslight you into believing Scientology has the solution. And Scientology Now, thank you for the super chat. What would you say to the body routers to reach them? That is an excellent question, and let's talk about that. Most of the body routers, if not all, in Scientology have probably done very little Scientology services on the bridge to total freedom. They are likely have not done the upper confidential level. So sometimes when you yell Xenu or talk about body thetans, they have no idea. Because in Scientology, you don't talk about Scientology. Remember, first rule of Scientology, don't talk about Scientology unless you're doing it in a way that's, oh, I just finished this course and it totally changed my life. I now am so much better at communicating because I just don't anymore. I just cut people off in my life if I don't like what they're saying. Makes no sense at all. So I would say things I think that are effective are ask them questions. I've seen people ask, I've heard them ask, how do you feel about the Danny Masterson trial? They may know or they may not know, but they definitely know who Danny Masterson is. Specific things like that. I'd ask him about, what are your thoughts on all of the news reports about David Miscavage physically beating his staff? And if you watch, there's a couple of guys, and Chris Without a Hellcat is one of them, who he does a good job at questioning Scientologists because he does it in a way that you catch him off guard if you're just being kind of friendly about it. If you yell things at them, they immediately know, ooh, squirrel, suppressive person. I need to close my ears and put on my blinders. That's what they're indoctrinated to do. But if you approach them with a pleasant disposition and just ask them questions, sometimes you catch them off guard and you actually get them to answer the question. I think things like that, because those questions stick around in your mind. And I'm telling you this as someone who was in Scientology for 35 years. I had that happen to me. There were protests and different things over the year. People would yell things, people would ask questions. For me, everybody's different, but for me, the questions were impactful because it made me go, wait, what? What happened? Why didn't I hear about that? And it would pique your curiosity, and I'd want to go find out. And once I made the decision to leave Scientology, I was willing to lose my family if that's what it meant at that point, except for my children. I knew I was taking my children with me. Um, it took me 2 years to execute a plan to make sure that 3 generations of my family that we left together, and mainly my daughter who had turned 18 while she was training in Florida. Where Aaron is, where he's doing these videos in Clearwater, that's where my daughter was kept. That's where she was working over 100 hours a week when she was supposed to be there training for her job in the Twin Cities. She was a Scientology staff member at that point. And that's where she experienced firsthand sleep deprivation, food deprivation for not making sales quotas, because people like her would do Scientology training and then be used to work delivering Scientology courses till, say, 10 o'clock at night. Then they got sent to their call center to call Scientologists in different time zones earlier to sell them Scientology books or get money for the International Association of Scientologists. North 40 lady, can you describe a bit the psychological transition you went through after leaving? What was that like? Girl, I'm still doing it. um, it would, you know what? I should probably do a whole video just on that, because I have been out of Scientology for 13 years. I have been declared a suppressive person for about 13 years. And I would say it took me a solid decade to get to the point where I felt like I found some happiness. Not that I was never happy during those 10 years, but I don't know how to explain it. It's like this thing just got lifted off. The more I stripped away that cult mentality and that cult culture, but it doesn't happen based in my experience. And guys, I can only speak for me and what I went through and what I've seen happen in my family. And it's that it comes off in layers. A lot of times you first leave Scientology. My husband at the time, we left Scientology together, but he's totally out of Scientology now. But at that time, the message was, we're leaving Scientology, the organization, but remain Scientologists. That wasn't completely true for me. It was for him at the time. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go along with that message because I think that, he will come around eventually as well. And he did. We ended up splitting probably about 2 years after we left Scientology. And he's doing great today as well. But during that time, it's like in the beginning, I left Scientology, I got a divorce, my mom passed away, and my mom was she was on operating Thetan level 7 when we left Scientology. So we had 2 years together outside of Scientology, which were fantastic. And unfortunately, she passed away 2 years after that. So there was a lot going on at the same time, but the psychological part of it. And here's the other thing. For a long time, I didn't have the words to put to it, because in Scientology, there's this fear of psychology and counselors and therapists, because L. Ron Hubbard didn't want the competition. And the more I started to open my mind and my eyes about those things, about mental illness, what these things are really called, and started learning and understanding the world outside of Scientology's terminology for things within Scientology, it helped me understand it. The more I could understand it, the more I could let it go. And the more I let different concepts and ideas in Scientology go, the more I realized that I'm not a total bitch. Because when I left Scientology, that's what I thought. I'm just a shitty person. And that is part of the Scientology mindset of they just mentally will try to do a number on you if they think that you're wanting to leave. And it's a lot of why people don't leave. But the more I got to experience people outside of Scientology, the more that helped me. The more I was able to share things within that happened to me in Scientology and hear someone react in a way that was like, what? That's so wrong. I didn't know some of these things were wrong. A lot of times when you're in an abusive relationship or you're in a cult like Scientology, and this is really important, you don't recognize, one, that you're in a cult, two, that the behaviors and a lot of the things being done are abuse, are human rights violations, because they do it in a way that you think you deserve it. It's no different than being in an abusive relationship outside of Scientology. You see that happen all the time. And sometimes people will return to that abusive relationship in many ways because it's all you know. I grew up in Scientology. So a lot of these things were just, well, yeah, of course it would be like that. Of course there'd be sleep deprivation because you didn't get your job done. Yeah, you should be staying up late. Of course you're on rice and beans because you didn't get your job done. That's just part of the discipline. Scientology takes the idea and concept of discipline, which discipline is not, I'm not saying like discipline in a like hammering on people way. I mean, using discipline to show up to the gym, using discipline to do what you know you should be doing. They use that and they twist it. And they get you to believe that their punishment is good discipline. Their abuse is good discipline. This is why it can be so difficult to get somebody to see the light with Scientology. They don't know. And I think this is where a lot of the frustration comes from people who are on the outside looking in at Scientology. How do they stay? They're in a cult. There's all these abuses happening. How can they support an organization like this? Because they don't know. They don't. A lot of them don't. They come to know, they come to learn it. The more they're exposed, the more this is on social media, the more long form content, short form content that shows up on the internet, they're going to see it. And when you're exposed, I mean, it's marketing 101. When you're exposed to a message multiple times, several times after you see it, you act. I think that's all it is. We need to expose them to it, get it out there, share it on social media, create shorts, reels, whatever it is, and it'll start showing up in their feeds. That's one way. Right, Steve's got a question. Hi, Nat. How long into the time frame of your tenure with Scientology did you start figuring out that you were going to leave? Oh, I guess technically 33 years. I left after 35 years, but it was about year 33 is when I really made that decision. And I had doubts at different times. I had so many reasons to leave Scientology in that 35 years. And this speaks to how strong that mind control is and the fear of losing your family. I had 3 generations of my family in Scientology. I was very close to my family. That's not something I wanted to lose. That was the only world that I knew. Because here's the other thing in Scientology. They'll convince you that if you leave and you go into the outside world, especially as a Sea Organization member, that you're not going to make it. You're going to fail, that it's a dangerous place out there. And especially in the Sea Organization, that's the mentality. And so that there's just all part of that fear. And eventually your desire and need, you get so desperate to want to be away from it that trumps the fear. And that is the moment where people then will leave or start to leave, entertain the idea of leaving. And remember, leaving Scientology can be a process. Somebody might decide, I'm not going to go do Scientology services anymore. And I'm not going to show up to Scientology events anymore. And they start pulling away. Scientology calls that being disaffected. And they'll try to pull you in for reprogramming. And some just don't go back. And then they might try to harass you with the phone calls and things like that. And if there's any threats they can use against you, if you have family or relationships in Scientology, they'll try to use that against you. Hey, you need to come back and deal with this because you don't want to lose so-and-so. You don't want to be declared a suppressive person. They create such fear around this idea of being declared a suppressive person. I'm declared a suppressive person. Aaron, and growing up in Scientology, is declared a suppressive person. We're out here living our best lives. That's the other message that I really want to send to anyone under the radar in Scientology. It's not true. It is BS what they're telling you. There is such amazing life to be lived after Scientology. And it's probably most difficult for people in the sea organizations because many of them don't have a driver's license, don't have a bank account, don't have a passport. And that's why organizations like the Aftermath Foundation and the foundation that Aaron from Growing Up in Scientology is going to create exist to help them get on their feet and get away from Scientology. Meandering black sheep, they should make Lurch a celebrity, then he would be shipped off. Yeah, that's the other thing. If you get too much attention in this, they will do that because David Miscavage, Dictator Dave, wants to be the face of Scientology. And he is quickly not becoming the face of Scientology. It's just amazing how that works. Okay. So Cindy's saying, yeah, that guy asked William to drop charges and William said yes. That's what I thought I heard too. Drive-in fan, so glad former members are speaking out, trying to save others and especially children. Yes, I agree with that completely. Completely. And there are different ways. People got into Scientology in different ways for different reasons. And they're going to leave Scientology in different ways for different reasons. So I think it's very important to have a multitude of voices and diverse perspectives about this, and sharing and speaking from your experience, which is really all I can do, is share and speak from my experience in 35 years of Scientology and what happened to me and my family. Oh, by the way, my daughter Shelby, I'm pretty sure she told me she's on for tomorrow, is going to come over and we're going to do a live and dig more into her experience in Clearwater and what life has been like for her since leaving Scientology. So that's going to be tomorrow. We're nailing down the time, but I will get out a notification about that. So make sure you hit the notification bell too, so that when it does work, then you get a notification. Fear rules Scientology. Yes, Bev. Fear rules Scientology. That's completely where they're at. And that's why sometimes when you approach a Scientologist with some aggressiveness, that kicks in. Oh, that's probably a suppressive or a squirrel. I need to immediately put up my blinders. But when you're like, hey, how you doing? They might actually answer your questions. Squirrels rule. Yes, Brisbee Tales. I think I need to make a sweatshirt like that. If you go to my page, there's a link to my store, and we've got some really fun squirrel stuff in there, sweatshirts, all kinds of stuff, and I want to make more. Wanderer, do most Scientologists follow all of the rules? I think I would read things anyways. Most of them do, because it is painful financially and time-wise and emotionally and spiritually for them to go through reprogramming. So in Scientology, they operate off, like, if you do something and you're considered a liability by the group, you have to ask to come back into the group. And to do this, you have to deliver what they call an effective blow to the enemies of the group. So say you're out talking to AA Ron, not realizing who he is, or maybe you do and you're still talking to him. And Scientology, like, no, you're in trouble. You need to do what's called a liability formula, where they assign you your liability. And part of that is deliver this effective blow to the enemies of the group that you've been pretending to be a part of, despite personal danger. This is really important. Scientologists who get in trouble with Scientology might pull some shenanigans, or maybe I don't think they would let them counter protests. And they're delivering an effective blow could be, usually it's paying money, to be honest. That's what they're doing now. If you pay enough money, it's like, okay, you can come back into the group. Oh, you read an article that was you read the Rolling Stone magazine article. Okay, that's $5,000. I've heard that this is what they're doing. That's considered an effective blow by giving them more money. And then you have to make up the damage that you did by speaking to somebody or reading something you shouldn't have, far beyond the normal contributions of a group member. And that's almost word for word. So Scientologists have tremendous pressure on them to contribute financially, to contribute with their time, their volunteering, and you have to do beyond that if you have to make up the damage. And then probably the worst part of it is you have to write all of this down on a piece of paper. And on the last page, you're going to write approved on one side, disapproved down the other. You're going to draw a line down the middle. Then you have to take this to all of the Scientologists in your group, whatever your group is, whether it's in a course room or working for a certain organization. They have to read it and sign and accept you or not accept you back into the group. And you only get accepted back when the majority of people say that you can. I have read these liability formulas, as they're called. They are so cringe. And even on my best day in Scientology, I hated that because some of it was none of my business. You stepped out on your wife or your husband, and now you're getting back into the good graces. Well, okay, good, taking responsibility, but I don't need to know the details. I don't need to know all these things. It's shaming. It's shaming. And that's a powerful tool in Scientology, because when you're a Scientologist, especially if you've done the upper levels on the bridge to total freedom, if you've done those things, the expectation of your level of morality and ethics is so much higher. It basically, you're supposed to do this bridge to total freedom. Freedom, right? Where's the freedom part? You're doing it because there's supposed to be total freedom. The higher you go, the stricter the rules become. I've shared with you guys, I got in mass trouble because I took a strip fitness class, exercise on a pole. It was a ton of fun. It was such a hard workout. And I got in such trouble for that because it was unbecoming of an operating thetan. So you see how that kind of works? It's just all, the control gets so strict the further and further that you go up. The mind control is stronger. It's so strong that you are self-controlling yourself. You are putting on the blinders. You are making sure you're not reading. You are reporting on other people, because there's a huge snitch culture in Scientology. Because if you don't report on somebody, then you're guilty too. Thank you, Dip Me in Glitter. Get your amazing squirrel merch. Yes, I would love that. I'm going to make more this weekend because I love doing it. Simpri Viva. In Scientology, can you take business course, pay for it, but not join the church? Well, if you're doing, that's all perspective, right? There are people who've taken courses in Scientology and will say, well, I never joined Scientology. I just took a course. Scientology counts any person who's ever been exposed to Scientology in any way as a Scientologist. That's how they claim millions of members. There's not millions of members. There's maybe, 20,000, probably less than 30,000. So I don't know if that answers the question. And now the question disappeared. Oh, there. Yes. So there are organizations within Scientology, front groups. One of them is called the WISE group. I think that stands for World Institute of Scientology Enterprises. And they pretend to be business consultants, and they like to go after chiropractors, dentists, people who are great at their job, but maybe don't have as much savvy on the business side. And they present themselves as having the business and administrative solutions to this. It's a gateway drug to Scientology, because some of those things, it does help people. Putting in any type of organization is going to help. And many of these concepts in Scientology that are helpful for people are all over the place. They're universal truths, like gravity. Gravity is a thing. Believe in it, don't believe in it. It is a thing. And that was my experience in Scientology. The things that I found helpful that kept me there, I found outside of Scientology. They're in other books, other philosophies, other religions, in therapy. They're there and out there. But because you're not allowed to look at those things in Scientology because they don't want the competition, then you don't. So you can take a business course and pay for it and not join. But there will be so much pressure to get you to join, because that's the goal. These Scientology front groups exist to bring people into Scientology. They pay a fee to Scientology to use L. Ron Hubbard's business or administrative technology. And it's kind of cool because Aaron over at Growing Up in Scientology, when he's out live streaming, he shows you this is where he shows you where all the Scientology front groups are and how they're like totally empty. There's just not that many people in there. Monica, you're right. Maybe Scientology is watching the live streams too. They totally are. Then they know who has to be whisked away. Yeah. And security's watching on their cameras. Their security systems are pretty impressive. They often help the police to solve crimes or provide evidence all around their buildings because they have so much. They have so much cameras. They have so many cameras. Hey from North Georgia. Hey, Miss Sunrise Dawn. That's interesting. Cindy, I thought the music they blast on Hollywood Boulevard was to repulse and interbulate the TikTok kids. It's not working. If they think that, that would be really funny. Nancy, I love that there are more and more channels are popping up. They probably have 10 years and growing of content to watch. That is so true. That's why I kind of want to just recap as much as I can too. And plus I love coming here and having somebody to talk about it with. Although my Tony and I, it's become a sport, even like if my daughters are over, we'll watch and yell at the television. Es una secta. It's so much fun. You're right, Bev. William is such a warrior. I'm just so impressed with how he conducts himself and how he maintains his cool because in Scientology, they pride themselves again on these training routine drills to not react. But in truth, what they're doing is they're removing buttons so you don't react, but it takes away your humanity, your compassion, your empathy. So you're just creating a robot who in their head is playing a narrative of what they're told to believe about what's going on in front of them. So they become very unthinking about it, which is why you'll see when Scientologists go out to video, there's just not a lot of interaction. They're just quiet and staring. Videotaping people who love to be videotaped. Putting a camera in front of people who love a camera. Thinking they're going to expose people who put their lives all over the internet already anyways. The world is different. We live in a different place today. And this is why this is so wonderful. Be kind, you're right. Also, Chris is clean cut, dressed smart, and so they are willing to talk to him more readily. That is true. That is true. They probably think initially that he is a Scientologist, a young Scientologist doing something maybe that's pro-Scientology. Alioth. Oh, hide your wife, hide your kids, and hide your husband, because Scientology is going to snatch them away. They're going to try. Lanter's own, when did you find out about Xenu? I didn't find out about Xenu until I had to pay for it. When I got up to operating Thetan level 3, I found out with other Scientologists, and by the way, most Scientologists don't make it that far. That is when you find out, when you read the L. Ron Hubbard material about Xenu and body Thetans and this whole origin story, which basically, right, 75 million years ago or so, Xenu was this galactic overlord, and he was like, we have too much people. There is this overpopulation problem. I guess it was in some other whatever, on other planets and stuff, right? That L. Ron Hubbard didn't explain too much about that part. So what are we going to do about this overpopulation? Oh, I have an idea. Let's take all these people. Let's take them to Earth, which was then, he said, was called Tigiak, I think was the name. And let's dump them into volcanoes and blow them up with hydrogen bombs. And what happened is the souls, the Thetans of these people / aliens, L. Ron Hubbard never called them aliens. He referred to them, I think, as people, from what I recall. And the souls, the Thetans, right, then attached to humans and have been the source of what ails us. So if you're having a bad day, you got stuff going wrong, blame it on those body Thetans, those pesky, pesky body Thetans. But in Scientology, you can get rid of them for a ton of money. So that's when I found out on operating Thetan level 4. And then the one after that, I did. You think that you get rid of them on that level too? That's the other scam. You're like, oh man, yeah, all these body Thetans. I'm so glad that I got rid of them. So must be cool now, right? And you do your next step. Guess what? There's more body Thetans. And then you think, okay, maybe now I've gotten rid of them. You do your next step. Guess what? Ooh, there's more body Thetans because some of them are sleeping. It's a scam. It goes on and on. Then you get to the top of what is available to do on the bridge to total freedom. And what do you learn? All of those memories and things that you were doing in your Scientology auditing were not yours. They belong to the body things. It's just kicking the can down the road. Those things I did not find out till I left Scientology. I did learn about xeno and body things as a Scientologist. Granny G, I love this. I would love to see SNL do skits about Scientology testimonials. I should do a video on reacting to some Scientology testimonials. That would be funny. Sometimes Scientology will forget to take down the testimonials of people who left Scientology. I saw one the other day. I think I'm not going to say more because I'm going to try and find it and maybe do a video on it. But I know for a fact that person not only left Scientology, but joined a religion that blows my mind. Talk about going from the, what is it? Pot into the frying pan into the pot. You know what I'm saying? I was so surprised by that. But I'm going to go find out if that's still there. And maybe we'll do a video on that. Mike W., the blonde comedian on SNL, is a Scientologist. I forgot. You're right. She's got kind of bigger eyes. I don't remember the character she does, but you're right. She is a Scientologist. That would be interesting to see. She is a cast member and see what would happen. I wonder. Favorite Aunt Diddley, did you watch Liz Gale's live yesterday? Your thoughts? Oh, I didn't. I actually started it and I had to go do something, but I want to go back and watch it because I love Liz. I love her stuff on TikTok. I will watch that and find out. Wanderer, did your previous husband leave too? Yes, he did. He did. He is no longer a Scientologist or any of that, which is fantastic. It definitely made, we share a son together. I have 3 kids who are all adults now, and but it definitely made it easier being out of Scientology together. And he's a good guy. Both my ex-husbands, I have 2 ex-husbands. They're good guys, and they were both in Scientology, and they have both left. Be kind. Did you see on Will's channel the cops were caught staging in a parking lot around the corner after someone saw cops go in and get papers from the Church of Scientology? They dispersed after Will confronted them. I don't know if I caught that, but I heard about it, that they were there and that somebody came out and gave them some type of paperwork and then they left. Scientology loves their paperwork, printed paper. Churches of Scientology all over the world still send pounds and pounds of papers and files and folders in the mail. When you see them often carrying those boxes, sometimes those are a lot of those things. They call them mail packs. So the Church of Scientology in the Twin Cities will put together a mail pack for Scientology management, include their reports and things in there, and send it off. They do things digitally as well, but I'm often surprised by how much paper they're still using when it just shouldn't be necessary. So I don't know what that was about. I don't know what was on the paper. It was obviously some kind of shenanigans on their part. And yes, thank you, Nancy, for the reminder. If people put the question, if you write question in all caps in front of your question, I will catch it. I will catch it quicker. Thank you so much. And yes, hit the like button too. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Check your subscription and make sure that it's on there. Timothy MC, what are your thoughts on AA Ron's video about Grant Cardone? Oh, I saw that. It's so Aaron. I love it. I am so here for this battle with him and Grant Cardone. And Aaron's right. Everything that Aaron is saying about this is correct about Grant Cardone. It's true. And the way that Grant Cardone is going about handling this, why this man continues to go on podcasts and YouTube channels and subject himself to even more of the scrutiny. I'm so happy that he is. I mean, don't get it twisted. I love that he is doing that because he just keeps getting the same questions and he keeps not answering them. Even the simple question of, Grant, are you a billionaire? And it's just something he doesn't want to answer. Aaron's right about it. I think it's great. And I love it. Aaron can get real sassy and I love it. And I'm here for it. I watched it and I love his passion behind it. Grant Cardone, in my opinion, has his own cult. This whole 10,000X thing that he does with his business. And I've spoken to people who've done it and It just sounds really culty. It sounds like he's creating his own cult, not just ripping people off, but creating his own cult as well. Robin, how can they show a film on a big screen that emphasizes the importance of rest and then not let their staff sleep enough? Right? That's what I'm saying. That is exactly the point. They don't, there's such a disconnect in Scientology that they don't see that. Now, what she's talking about is in Hollywood, they have a big screen up and they're playing a video sharing the precepts from The Way to Happiness, which is a booklet created by L. Ron Hubbard as with this whole moral code, brush your teeth, get enough sleep. You know, it's all stuff that's pretty common sense. Don't get on a plane or drive a car if somebody's been drinking. It's like, remember, Scientologists, they don't update anything to that L. Ron Hubbard wrote. They continue operating off of that. And you're right. Here they are out there, right? Sharing this message of get enough sleep. And their staff members are completely sleep deprived because many of them do not see that as a form of punishment, as a form of manipulation, or as a form of mind control. Sleep deprivation is a form of torture. It's used to control people. It's easier to control you if you're tired and exhausted. It becomes you don't fight anymore. This is the mindset too for many Scientologists, especially ones who are staff members and who are in the Sea Organization. They're tired. They're exhausted. They're hungry. I'm not saying that all of them are hungry all the time. They are fed. And actually in the Sea Organization, the food, at least in my day, was not that bad. It was limited in choices, but definitely the sleep deprivation. It's more easy to control somebody when they're in that state of mind, right? Think about prisoners of war and what's done to them. Sleep deprivation, food deprivation, the questioning over and over again, the interrogation. It's not far off. And yet somehow the same people doing that, and that's part of why they show these videos and promote this way to happiness, because Scientology believes that if they're promoting this moral code of get enough sleep and all that, surely they're not violating that. If they're promoting the Declaration of Human Rights, which they didn't write, they took it, and they use it in their Citizens Commission on Human Rights, which is a front group for Scientology. They think that if we're out there promoting and advocating for human rights, nobody will think back there behind the curtains that there's human rights violations going on in human trafficking. This is what they think. But L. Ron Hubbard never anticipated the internet, never anticipated live streaming. Even though these things have been being talked about for decades, there have been so many whistleblowers that have come before who have blown the whistle, who have protested out of Scientology since the 70s and even earlier. This has been going on for a long time. It's only gained traction with the public in a huge way since I think about 2010, 2012, maybe when the Tampa Bay Times started doing these articles with people like when Mike Rinder left Scientology and turned whistleblower. For Scientologists who've been in Scientology for a long time, that is huge because he was the face and voice of Scientology until David Miscavage pushed him aside and started doing all his events on his own and locked Mike up in the hole with a bunch of other Scientology executives and physically beat them. So it makes a big difference when people know people like that have left Scientology. They don't, all that's going on behind the scenes, the coerced abortions, the other human rights abuses. And yet Scientology believes that if we promote the way to happiness and the Declaration of Human Rights, no one will suspect us. Fail, flunk, Scientology. Your cult is showing. People know. People see it. People are finding out. It's such BS. They don't get it. They don't connect the dots. It makes it more suspicious because all of you, and this is why I love all of you, but I got a soft place in my heart. You know this, for people who've never been in Scientology, because you see it. And for people like me, I've been out for 13 years and I've talked to a lot of people about this early on. And they're like, yeah, that sounds really bad. But it kind of felt like they didn't believe me in ways. And then when Leah Remini came out with her show, it was like, oh, and that's like scratching the surface of what happens in Scientology. It's a different time and you guys are seeing it play out here in real time. So Larry says, is Scientology itself racist? It sounds Latino. It sounds Latinos you don't see too much mixture of any other races. Um, there's nothing in my experience in Scientology. I did not study things or I never got the vibe that they were racist. They are biased as hell against other religions, other groups, the way they speak about them. They claim publicly to be non-denominational. In fact, in their own writings and teachings of L. Ron Hubbard, he falsely says that you can practice other religions and be a Scientologist. They do videos about it. I practice in the Jewish faith and I am still a Scientologist. There might be some truth to that in that you can still celebrate Jewish holidays, but that's not your primary religion. The higher you go up in Scientology, the more there's an expectation that you're going to put all that nonsense aside because they don't believe in that. My mom, after she left Scientology, was baptized, went and got baptized in the Christian religion. And my daughter, actually, you know what? My mom, I got to back it up. My mom didn't leave Scientology yet. She did it while she was still in Scientology. And again, my mom had gotten up to operating Thetan level 7 on the bridge to total freedom. Her going and getting baptized was a complete act of rebellion, but honestly, it also was, she was reestablishing, I think she was searching and wanting to have a relationship with God again, because you cannot have that in Scientology. I don't care what they say. And she got in trouble for that. My daughter, who was in Florida, when we had to get her out and send her out of the country to get her away from Scientology. My daughter was told before she ever left the base in Florida to come home that it was such an outpoint because your grandma went and got baptized and your mom's doing strip fitness classes and going on date nights with her husband instead of being at the Scientology church. What the hell? This true story. This totally happened. So that's just part of the PR. They think if we go out and we say these things that they're going to be real. Yet we're seeing every day now that that's not the truth and it's being exposed. More and more people coming out. And if there's anyone who wants to share their story as a Scientologist, especially wherever you were in Scientology, but I want to really talk a lot more about the Scientology parishioners too, because I feel like their story hasn't been told as much. And it's crazy. Is it true only whites can rise to the top of upper management? No. You know, this is interesting though. In my day, I feel like there were more people of color in Scientology, not a ton. But I remember back in my day, Jesse Prince, who's one of the OG whistleblowers on Scientology, I think he was up at the Religious Technology Center. He's Black. The Continental Justice Chief for the Western United States, when I was in the Sea Organization, was Black. I remember I was staying off the base and I was there for correction and reprogramming and I just wasn't having it. This was shortly before I left the Sea Organization. And so I was going to leave. They had shipped me off to Seattle and that's where I was, but I was in LA for correction. And I'm like, I'm leaving. They went to where I was staying. They canceled my cab that I had scheduled, because this was back in the day before Uber, where you had to take a taxi. And I had one scheduled. And somehow they found that out. They canceled it. I just got another one and left anyways. I did have to go back. Otherwise, I would have been declared a suppressive person. But he came out to tell me that I would be declared a suppressive person if I left. But my point is, he was Black. My first boss in the Sea Organization, George, was too. But I noticed as time went on that became less and less and less. So I don't know what that was about. I'm not aware of anything in Scientology that says due to your race, your background, you can't be in upper management. Plus, they're real tight with the Nation of Islam. So I think that would be a big conflict in that way. RNLC4 Mom and Babes. Natalie, did you watch Sterling with Dylan Gill? Interesting discussion on the psychopathy, sociopathy, narcissism bred by the Sea Org and Church of Scientology. What are your thoughts? I did not see it, but it's on my list of ones to watch because I saw that. It completely, especially at the Sea Organization level, it does encourage narcissism because you can never be wrong. When you're the boss person, crap rolls downhill, right? So if it's Dictator David Miscavige at the top of the organization, being his little dictator self and beating his staff and creating abusive and holding people in locked double wide trailers, all of these things has come out, that things that he has done, and multiple whistleblowers have come out about this. Crap rolls downhill. People start to think that's how you behave. That's how you get things done. They hold David Miscavige up. You should hear Scientologists talk about David Miscavige. It's gross. And because a lot of them don't know, they do not know about the abuses because they're not allowed to read anything. But I'll tell you this. In my experience, I have found this interesting that Scientologists who do find out about what David Miscavige has done, not surprised. I've kind of been shocked by that reaction. So there is a level where just under the surface, many Scientologists are questioning, what is this? Like, why is he saying these things? Where did these people go? Why am I being told that Natalie, somebody I respected, has lost her mind and gone off the deep end and has become an enemy of the church? That all this propaganda, it's right below the surface of the mind control. And it just takes a little bit to open that door of free thinking. And some of them just grab onto it and become very curious. And in Scientology, that's curiosity kills the cat. But it really doesn't. Curious is what you need to be, because then you question. And I believe that anytime, Scientology or not, if you're not allowed to question, if you're not allowed to read or listen to an opposing view, that's cult mentality. That's cult behavior in my mind. I can disagree with you. It doesn't mean I'm afraid to listen to you. You can disagree with me. It doesn't mean we can't have dialogue. But putting this complete, no, you can't look at that, you can't be exposed to it, I think that's super culty. Larry, is there really a lot of people under the radar? Yeah, there are. And many of them are under the radar because they don't want to lose their families. There's fear. There's so much fear around being declared a suppressive person. And it is so not a big deal outside of the fact that, yes, you can lose all of your connections, friends. If you're doing a bunch of business with Scientologists, that will be shut down. So that's a valid thing and a valid fear. But what they, I think, eventually realize is there's life. There's so much life and freedom outside of Scientology. Everything that you are in Scientology working towards exists and is obtainable outside of Scientology, and for no money or the cost of a therapist. Honestly, it really is. And they start to learn that and feel that. Yeah, they just keep people tired and all that. Wanderer, how did you get your mom convinced to leave? Were you terrified someone would turn you in? In the beginning, you're real careful. You do a dance. I like to call the I'm thinking of leaving Scientology dance. Are you? Where you say something that's a little maybe like, maybe you say something like, it just seems like people are being expected to buy so many of these book packages when they're not really needed, and to donate them. That would get you in trouble in Scientology because they make you buy all these book packages and extra copies to send to prisons and libraries so that Scientology can get the money for these books. And by the way, they're not selling them to you at cost. It's part of that whole fear, right? My mom, I didn't have to convince my mom to leave. I don't think I could have convinced my mom to leave. She was having her own experiences and her own doubts. And this is what gets misconstrued and is twisted in the Scientology world. They think that people like me are going and pulling people out. I will cop to doing that with my daughter. I mean, she'll tell you, she had said that, when my oldest, when I was getting her out of Scientology and I got her out of Florida under false pretenses, Scientology told everybody I kidnapped my own child. She was 18, 19 by then. And until she was far enough away from Scientology, she thought I was ruining her life and Christmas, because this happened over Christmas. And it didn't take long for her to wake up to what was happening and she's doing fabulous today. And like I said, I hope she's coming over tomorrow to talk more about that. And so with my mom, it was just kind of like dropping a few little tiny questions, and she responded in ways that wasn't like, hey, you're being out ethics. You shouldn't be saying that. You need to report yourself to the organization or anything like that. And then it just gets bigger and bigger. You start talking about more and more, and then you realize you both want to leave. That's what happened with my mom. And to be honest, pretty much everybody in my family, except for my daughter. And that's only because she wasn't physically with us. She was in Florida. We were in Minnesota, and she turned 18. And so I needed her to willingly leave. So when she left, she didn't know she was leaving Scientology. She just thought she was going on vacation with her dad to Mexico, which she was. But the whole plan was to get her out of the country and give her a new cell phone. I give her a whole burner phone, told her it was for Christmas so she wouldn't suspect. I mean, the lengths that I had to go to get my daughter out of Scientology were incredible. And that's sometimes what it takes. I had to pull, although I'm pre Katie Holmes. Katie Holmes kind of pulled something like that. But yeah, that's what we had to do. So you start communicating about like little doubts or little concerns with people in Scientology, and you find out pretty quick where they're at on it because they won't say something, or they do say something and report you. But Scientology did know that I was having doubts, because during my 2 years of executing my plan, towards the end, the last step was to get my daughter off of the Flag Land base and put her somewhere where Scientology couldn't reach her long enough for her to get good sleep, good food, and start to shed that cult control and that mentality, because it was so strong, because she was in the belly of the beast in Florida. And you see the base and how big it is and how people get hidden away when you watch. Like, again, I linked to the video in the description for this video, to Aaron growing up in Scientology's video. You see it play out. So hopefully that answers your question on that. But that is the thing. A lot of people don't, the questioning starts slowly, and they're afraid to communicate about it until they know it's safe to communicate about it. And then it all comes out. The bummer is sometimes people then turn and they go back to Scientology, and then they report on you that you were saying all this stuff. So that's kind of how it plays out. And that's okay, because sometimes people need a push. You look at Relatable Reese, who's here on YouTube, and Erin, growing up in Scientology, accidentally doxed her when she was being a double agent and sharing things about Scientology. And today she'll say that's the best thing that ever happened to her. She did lose family, and that's super painful, but it saved her and her son, because they were forced to step away from all of that. And so you see what I'm saying? Sometimes it's such a fear of losing this, but then sometimes I think Scientologists will put themselves in positions of being kicked out or being found out, because sometimes it's hard to just take that step. But then when someone gives you a shove, even if accidentally, you take it. Kendall links. So would joining Jazzercise or running club, other group exercise classes be out? No, it was mainly because it had the word strip in it, and it was on a pole. Even though it was only exercise, we didn't take our clothes off, and it was only women in there. You can do other ones, though. I have heard about them losing their mind a little bit about yoga. If you practice yoga and meditation, that's an issue, because they say it'll interfere with you spiritually. It wasn't till I left Scientology that I realized, oh, I know why they don't want people to meditate, because it makes you feel better. It helps you be a better person and in better control of your own life. And we can't have that. We can't have that, Scientology. Not at all. Thank you, Carla, for the super chat. Carla A. Jessica Palmadessa authored a petition to revoke Scientology's tax-exempt status. I sent you an email with the link. Thank you. That is awesome. I will make sure to share that as well. That's fantastic. Very cool. I did put a link in the description of this video of how you can find out who your elected officials are and what you should be asking of them. LJ, what does Scientology do to save the world from pollution? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. They use like The amount of paper that they must go through, because again, they're so living in the past in ways. They're doing more digitally now, but there's still so much paper. So definitely they're not going to be doing anything about pollution. Nothing that I'm aware of, because they're not going to divert funds from dictator Dave's pockets to do something like helping pollution on the planet. I would be really surprised. They might try like a front group or something like that, because the way to happiness is used that way. I think it says something in there about taking care of the planet, but we know they don't practice what they preach. All that is front group stuff. The way to happiness, the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, the Declaration of Human Rights that they claim to follow. That is all front group stuff. So you don't look behind the curtain. But now with this whole movement and everything going on, people are looking more and more behind the curtain now, and they're seeing what's happening. They're seeing what's happening. And you're right, William's been dealing with the LAPD for years. Shackelford, yes, we talked about Solomon. Absolutely. The way that in Hollywood, how they're continuing to just abuse this kid, or trying to. I don't think he's taken it or feeling anything about it. And William gives them a piece of his mind after they do it. It's very much, that's all they can do, right? What can they do? Sticks and stones. It's so juvenile, but we know this about many people in Scientology, especially the Sea Organization. There's a lack of emotional intelligence and ability to see things from another point of view. That's completely stunted in Scientology. So of course they're going to respond in ways that are very juvenile, very juvenile. That's all that they can do. And name call, try to intimidate and bully. Those are their tactics. L. Ron Hubbard said, never defend, always attack. And that's what they do. That is what they do. That's what they try to do. And you know what? In this day and age, especially in 2024, where I feel that as humans, we have evolved quite a bit, and people aren't down with bullying. Not to say it doesn't happen. It does. But more people aren't down with that. We're not down with bullying. We're not down with body shaming. We're not down with a lot of things that Scientology still thinks that the rest of the world is doing. And that's what they get called out on so much. And that's what we're seeing on the internet. This is what we're seeing play out. Specula. Grant Cardone has always triggered me immensely. Oh, and then this person goes on to say also, I just recently found out he was a Scientologist. Makes sense though, right? When you find that out and you're like, oh, okay. Hamiltron, I forgot about this. You'd think they have all the printed stuff scanned into hard drives made of gold, hidden in the mountains they own in the desert. Are you being sarcastic? Because they do. It's on titanium plates. There's a whole project that was created that they would get money for, where they have these bunkers full of L. Ron Hubbard's technology on these titanium plates locked away, so that if there was a massive disaster on the planet, that Scientologists could come back and find these L. Ron Hubbard materials and resurrect Scientology. No joke. They've spent so much money on this. It still exists. I haven't heard recently of people paying for that, but I'm also not in Scientology anymore, but I bet they are. All right, LJ's got a question here. Who do you think would be the successor to the little man, David Miscavage? Natalie, you're doing such a valuable service. Thank you. You guys are doing a valuable service by being here and helping to get this message out and supporting my channel. Thank you very much. Who do I think would be the successor? This is a question I wonder about a lot, because David Miscavige is a dictator, and that is how he runs Scientology. Trust me when I tell you, if anybody was close enough to him who could take over, that he thought might take over, he would get rid of them, because he would be worried that they would get rid of him, because that is what he did. In 1986, when L. Ron Hubbard died, that was when the big takeover of David Miscavige happened. All Scientologists were told that these two other people, this couple, they were taking over Scientology, the running of Scientology. They were with L. Ron Hubbard in his last days. And There were even these little like letters that went out that Scientologists used to keep on their desk about them. They're the brokers, Annie and Pat Broker. And in fact, Google Annie and Pat Broker Scientology and you can hear the whole story. And those were done away with. David Miscavage took over and got rid of them. He got rid of anybody that was going to stand up to him and get in the way of him taking over Scientology completely. So if somebody is waiting in the wings to take over or be the next successor, I don't know how that's going to get pulled off. I really don't, because he's so like that, because he is a dictator. Now, I think he's in his early 60s now. At some point, I mean, you got to kind of have a succession plan. I don't know. I would love to know what his thoughts are on that, or if he's just walking around thinking that he's going to live forever, or maybe somebody would temporarily take over so that when dictator Dave does pass away, that he can come back maybe in 12 years with another body and then take over Scientology again. Maybe that's the plan. So he only needs an interim dictator long enough for him to, grow up in another body in his next lifetime and take over, because he signed a billion-year contract. So you would think that dictator Dave is going to be coming back to serve that contract, but we all know he's not going to do it as a regular Sea Org member and live in those conditions. He lives like a king with his custom suits, his cars, his motorcycles, his palatial offices. While Sea Org members are living 15 people in a room, bunk beds 3 high. When you get married, you get your own room, but sometimes you're sharing a bathroom with another couple. But he's not living like that. No. Yep, that's right, Dog's Rule, and they call it total freedom. It's freedom from your money. Freedom from your free time. Freedom from speaking to the people you'd like to speak to. Freedom from having relationships with anybody you choose to. Freedom from doing the classes you want, even if they're called strip fitness. No, none of that. None of that. Dog's Rule, I agree. The Nation of Islam connection is bizarre. It's very interesting. There's an interesting history there. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Personal, did your family spend a lot of money in Scientology? Larry, yes. Yes, and yes, especially with 3 generations of my family in Scientology. Oh yeah, don't forget your merch. I'm going to get some new stuff out there. Thank you to the mods for sharing these things and reminding people to like the channel or subscribe to the channel and like the video. Carl, I like this. We need to create homes for others from the organization to come out of it. It's so sad that the average person doesn't know people are enslaved in present time. Yes, that's so true. There has been a underground help system for a while for some people leaving the Sea Organization. Even before the Aftermath Foundation, people were working on that and even taking in Sea Org members and helping them get back on their feet again. And with more foundations like this, more of that work can be done. Specula, what percentage of members there are scared and want to leave, do you think? I would say, and it depends on the Sea Organization versus the everyday parishioners, because everyday parishioners of Scientology get to leave and go home and somewhat live more normal lives. It's easier for them to stay. Not always, depending on their circumstances, but it is the worst for Sea Organization members. And yes, if they knew that there was support and help out there, I think it would help a lot of them leave, because they would have a place to land and they knew that they weren't that the world that they've been being told exists out there doesn't exist. When I left Scientology, the more time I spent with people outside of Scientology, the more I understood that there are a lot of good people in the world and a lot of people who want to help and are helping people in many different ways. Steve Kahn, I think I saw one of the guards or some dude in Scientology on YouTube that was carrying a firearm. No? Yeah, at the International Management Base, there's been reports of people who've left there and turned whistleblower that they do have a stash of guns out there. That is my understanding. And I don't know for sure about in Los Angeles, but I can't imagine that they don't. I would imagine that they would. Because I'm pretty sure they did too back when the riots were happening, the LA riots in like the early 90s. You remember that? All right, let's see here. Am I missing? I'm missing. Oops. Steffi, what what if DM comes one day and says he found OT 9 and 10, would they believe him? Yeah, they'd believe him. He's saying, he tells Scientologists that it exists, that if we expand every church of Scientology up to a certain size, that L. Ron Hubbard said OT levels 9 and 10 can be released. So he tells people that's part of the propaganda and the lie, that they exist and they don't. And Aaron at Growing Up in Scientology talks about that. That was one of the things that really sealed it for him about leaving Scientology, was when he found out that there was no operating Thetan level 9 and 10, that it was all a lie. Maybe David Miscavage is going to make it up. I don't know, but it doesn't exist. That has been proven by people who were there and knew and left the Sea Organization and became whistleblowers. Steve, how close are we to getting Tony on the show? LOL. And will he shave? That's my Tony. I don't know. However, when we get to 10,000 subscribers, my Tony said that he will come on and do a live with me. So I think we're a little over halfway there. So thank you. Thank you, everybody, for who's helping us do that. Yeah, Mark Murphy, Scientology is like being in North Korea. In fact, I did a whole video just on that because I believe it so much. The similarities. North Korea is on a larger scale, and many people are dying because of it. Scientology has its similarities and problems, but I guess I don't want to equate that they're equal in their destruction, but if you understand or you start learning about North Korea and the propaganda used to keep the people in line, it's right there with Scientology and what David Miscavige does. Sean speaks on YouTube. Will Scientology just wait out this wave of Aaron spot inspections? I think they assume Aaron will stop going. Thoughts? If they know Aaron at all, they're not going to think he's going to stop going. I would be really surprised. Will they try to wait it out though? Yes. I mean, what else can they do? Is just hide Scientologists away. And the crazy thing is, the videos I've seen of Aaron from Growing Up in Scientology out there, hey, how you doing? You going on course? Hey, what do you think about the Austin org opening? Do you think the command team is going out? What is he doing? He's out there just asking people questions about Scientology. What's wrong with that? Unless you're in Scientology. They will shoot themselves in the foot over and over and over again, because that's the playbook for Scientology. They are the experts on that. It's truly, you can count on that. There's always something like that. That's going to happen in Scientology. You guys are so right. All right, I'm going to take a couple more questions here. Can you get audit out of the Scientology hotels? So can you get auditing out of the Scientology hotels? So, I mean, if we're talking physical location, depends on where you are. The Manor Hotel in where Celebrity Center is, it's the same building. So you can stay at the hotel, but your Scientology auditing is done on a different floor. In the blue buildings, Scientology is delivered to the public at the Advanced Organization of Los Angeles, which is on L. Ron Hubbard Way. They don't have any housing in there. Scientologists don't stay there. It's a Scientology organization, but that one's not a hotel. The St. Hill organization, where that whole metallic, big old lion is, that's an organization building where services are delivered. It's the only hotels in Los Angeles are the Manor Hotel, but there are places where the staff live, staff berthing it's called. And those are around Hollywood, and they're at the blue buildings. When I was a Sea Organization member, that's where I lived. And where you see the big Scientology sign? Kind of behind that is a building called Lebanon Hall, and that's where I lived. And where you see the horseshoe, when people go around, there's this horseshoe-like drive, and the doors are shut. If you go through there, that's how you get there. And their security, unless they moved it, that's where the main security office used to be. And in fact, for a while when I was in the Sea Organization, I sat at the reception desk there because deliveries and things would be made. And basically we were trained to handle process servers by not accepting anything. That's a whole reason why we were put there, so that if a process server showed up that you just didn't accept it, and they couldn't just walk in the building. It really is something. Sean speaks on YouTube. I do like seeing all the places mentioned in Aaron's past videos other than skywalkways. Do they have tunnels? Yeah, they do in both the big blue buildings and I think in Clearwater. I do believe there is. I forget exactly. The vast majority of my time was spent in California at the blue buildings when I was a Sea Organization member and as a Scientology parishioner. I did do some things in Florida, but I definitely did more in Los Angeles. But I've heard about that. I've heard that there were. Dogs rule. Does Davey have kids? Nope. You're not allowed to have children in the Sea Organization. That's why there's such an issue with the coercion of abortions of these married couples who, if you want to keep your child, there's a lot of pressure put on you to not, because there's no facilities for that. I did hear that these days they just kick you out of the Sea Organization, but they're so hard up for staff and free labor that you can't tell me they're not still pressuring couples into ending their pregnancy so they can stay and be free labor. When a Scientologist goes to the dentist and has to have Novocaine, do they have to do the Pure over again? No, not because it's just one time, but there are many reasons Scientologists are made to do the purification rundown over. And for those who don't know, it's their sauna program where you spend 5 hours a day in the sauna taking dangerous levels of niacin and other supplements to sweat out toxins and drugs, which has been scientifically proven to not be true. I've not looked into all of the science behind it. This is just my understanding now. But they'll make people redo the purification rundown. It's just a money grab. They make you redo so many things in Scientology that it's just a money grab. I wouldn't put it past them to say, oh, you went to the dentist and had Novocaine. You need to do the Scientology purification rundown again, because then they get to pay for it. That's why many Scientologists will avoid things like that, painkillers, Novocaine, unless it's absolutely necessary, because they don't want to have to redo the purification rundown again, which is just, again, where it hurts them, in the wallet. They will stay in line because they don't want to pay for it. So what does that tell you? Take away the tax exempt status. It hits them in the wallet. They can't write it off anymore. Scientology can't have all these buildings and not be paying taxes and contributing that way to the communities that they're in. A prison is not that crowded. You're right, Nancy. Nancy Alley said that. You actually do have more private space in prison than you do in the Sea Organization. Sean speaks on YouTube. Who do you think will win this battle of wills, Scientology or Aaron? He might have to show up every day to show them he means business. They know he means business. And my money's on Aaron every day, all day. And the people with him who are doing this too. He's getting some really good support. Their crowd continues to grow. It's the beauty of this, I think, is even though we talk about the Office of Special Affairs and the different harassment of Scientology, there's really nothing they can do. This isn't something that anyone should be, that not to say that they're not going to have their shenanigans, but when you're out there live streaming the whole thing and you're open, right, you're going to share it. Anything they do is going to be known and they're going to shoot themselves in the foot again. So it gets harder and harder for them to do anything because it's just more and more ways that people are showing them that they're totally a cult. Mark Murphy, there are no scientists in Scientology, ironic or fact? I can't say for sure. I don't recall ever meeting a scientist when I was in Scientology, but that doesn't mean that they don't exist. I can't say for sure on that. Thank you so much again, too, for people who are subscribing who haven't. I really appreciate that. Oh, Dip Me and Glitter, you're so sweet. We're close. Actually, I'm behind on the chat, so I'm not sure where we are. But I'm gonna catch up because we got to get to 10,000 subscribers so Tony can come on. He's so messing with me now. He's like, I'm gonna tell all your secrets. And I'm like, I already did. I tell him all the time. Matthew says, William Good is hastening the end of Scientology. That is true. I'd be happy for the end of the abuses. I think that Scientology to some degree is going to continue to exist because there are people who want to practice Scientology outside of the church. And I don't care. Just don't continue with the abusive practices. If you want to get rid of your body thetans and stuff like that and mind your own business, fine. Malarkey, Nat, do you know Marissa Diane Eddix? I think she would be a good person for you to chat with, Republic Scientologist. I don't, but if you can connect her, Natalie@tonkatalk.com is my email. I would love to talk to her. Ms. Amber Sunshine, is there any connection with Putin being buddies? Not that I'm aware of. If somebody else is aware of something else, maybe you can share it in the chat or the comments. Kathleen, is there a punishment for becoming pregnant and not being a married couple? How is it determined who is forced to terminate the pregnancy? In the Sea Organization, you cannot have sex or pretty much touch each other in any type of fun way without being married. Now, not everyday regular Scientologists who are public or staff members, they can live together and do all that. In the Sea Organization, it is a rule that you cannot. So if you're getting pregnant, you're a married couple. If you were pregnant outside of being married, it's not so much that you got pregnant without being married that's the problem. It's that you had sex without being married in the Sea Organization, you see? And then the fact, too, that you got pregnant when you know you're not supposed to. So it's determined who's forced to terminate the pregnancy. That's in the Sea Organization. So it all depends on... I mean, honestly, in my time, pretty much anybody who got pregnant was tremendously pressured to do that. And they claim they don't do that anymore, but I don't think I believe that. Bev, yes, Netflix needs to wake up. I'm telling you, people, you know that this is a Netflix special in the making. In the making. I'm over here wondering who's going to play William Good. There's so many pieces of this. Who's going to play Jessica Palmadessa? Who's going to play Aaron at Growing Up in Scientology? I just wonder, you know what's going to happen. You know it's going to happen. If not Netflix, something else. Because how do you not cover this? I think it's going to be bigger than Tiger King. Because there's so much to it. And just when you think you know it all about Scientology, and just when you think you have heard all the crazy, they double down. It gets worse. It gets even more, absolutely even more crazy. Salty Rider, you mentioned having 2 ex-husbands. So you're single? No, I'm not. I am very much in a relationship with my Tony. We've been together for 10 years. So very much taken. But thank you for asking. Mark says Scientology's plan is to outlast protesters. They think they'll be there past when protesters get bored. That's completely true. And it's probably why they close the blinds, but they can't help themselves. David Miscavage has to do something to show the parishioners what they've done, what attack they did, what actions they took to confront and shatter suppression, which is what they say, but they don't really ever do that. Dip me in glitter. Natalie, did you do silent birth? I know they want silent births to be done. Oh, you don't know if I've talked about this before. I think I might have talked about it a little bit. So I have had 3 children, all of them while I was in Scientology. And to answer your question, yes, because that is what is expected, that you have a drug-free birth and you remain as silent as possible, because any words and things that are happening can negatively affect the baby and the mom, because your reactive mind records that and it must really upset your body thetans or something. And so the first time when I had my daughter as a member of the Sea Organization, it was at a birthing center with no drugs or medication, naturally, and as quiet as possible. It was horrible, if you can imagine. Second one, I had her in a hospital because I was living in Seattle then, but still without medication. And I was a little bit not that into being as quiet as possible. There was some good screaming going on. Third one, I was like, I definitely wanted to be medicated, not a full-blown epidural, only because I still had that Scientology mindset. But there was a shot that they were supposed to give me, but things got going too fast, couldn't do the shot. So I accidentally gave birth naturally again. And as quiet as possible. Such BS. Honestly, I'm pissed off about that. When I think about it, I have had a lot of things happen to me in Scientology that are horrific and would mortify you on multiple levels. But having 3 children, now I'm not knocking a natural birth. I think it's a beautiful thing. And if you choose to do that and create that experience for you and your family, that is wonderful. In Scientology, we're not given a choice. Things are presented in a way that this is how we have to do it because L. Ron Hubbard said to do it this way. It's not, if that makes sense, the mind controls. Do you have a choice? Sure. But you get in trouble for it. It's this expectation. And then because you believe everything that L. Ron Hubbard says, you believe that this is what's best for your baby. I believed at the time that having a silent birth was going to be the best thing for my child. So I did it 3 times. And the third time, for those of you that know about labor and delivery, I had Pitocin. They gave me Pitocin to stimulate more contractions. Pitocin-induced contractions are way worse than natural contractions. And I still had to do it without medication because that anesthesiologist didn't get his butt there fast enough. I guess I'm mad at them too. I'm not just mad at Scientology. This happened 25 years ago and I am still pissed about it. I really am. That manipulation into what women should do, how they should handle their bodies, I'm just so pissed off about that aspect when it comes to Scientology, trying to control so much of that. Wanderer, the people getting dropped off by buses in Clearwater, are they all Sea Organization? Most of them are, but some of them are also trainees from other organizations. When my daughter Shelby was there, she would have been one of the people on the bus. They're bused from these other places, which are like motels, turned into, they call it berthing, but they're basically motels for out-of-town staff Scientologists. If you're not a staff member training there, you're not allowed to stay there, but you can stay there if you are, and then they're bussed over. Scientology parishioners will stay at the Fort Harrison Hotel or other places around Clearwater, but you're not, you don't stay in the berthing with the staff because they want to hide that. They don't want you to see the roaches and the cramped quarters and all of that. They don't want you to see that. They try to keep them from that. Maria Martins, don't you think Scientology will do a U-turn on Sea Org members not having kids? They can bring back the kid ranches and have members for life. They need it. God, I hope not. That would be the worst thing to happen. Because what has happened to children in the Sea Organization, the amount of abuse that's been covered up, not just SA, but physical and emotional abuse too on children, because you're not a child in Scientology. You are a big being. You are a Thetan in a little body. And no, children have no place in the Sea Organization. They don't have the facilities to take care of it. And that kind of was part of the issue back in 86, why David Miscavage was like, nobody can have children in the Sea Organization, because they were starting to get in trouble. It was starting to come out, the conditions under which these kids and these babies were living and were not being taken care of, and where abuse was occurring. That was all about covering it up. And David Miscavige just thought, hey, let's just get rid of it altogether. So they did lose Sea Organization members who refused to terminate their pregnancies and wanting to have them, who would then leave. But I don't see him doing that. And especially today, I know I personally would lose my shit completely. That is something that probably could get me on a plane to Los Angeles to protest. They cannot bring kids back into this. Absolutely have no business doing it. So I don't think that they're going to. They don't have the resources, and they're not going to spend any money on it either. They don't put money on taking care of things, taking care of people. That's not where they're putting their resources. Steve Kahn, what does it take to get kicked out of Scientology, or do they just try to recycle you? They will try to recycle you. If you're willing to do the reprogramming, whether you're in the Sea Organization or not, if you're willing to go through those programs, they make it like, yeah, you can be back in the fold. But there are times, if you have major medical issues and they don't want to get stuck paying for it, they will what's called offload you from the Sea Organization, which is the same thing as kicking you out. If you turn out to have like some pretty big mental health issues, which they don't call mental health issues. They call it being a potential trouble source of the third kind. Actually, that's what I call it. They call it being a potential trouble source type 3. Type 3 is where you really go through, you actually have a psychotic break and experience psychosis. It's what happened to Lisa McPherson, who, if you don't know, you should Google Scientology and Lisa McPherson. She died under the care of Scientologists while she was experiencing what Scientology calls being a potential trouble source type 3. I like to call it potential trouble source of the third kind. And because they don't take proper care. Her story is absolutely devastating, and she's not the only one either that happened to. God, I got so worked up about that. I forgot the question. Oh yeah. So do they try to recycle you? They first will try to recycle you because they're just lacking members. That's kind of the whole thing. My KL. Mike Rinder has been getting called out by Serge and others for his decades of ruining lives. In your opinion, has he atoned, or is this criticism valid? I don't think it's for me to judge whether somebody has atoned for anything or not. I think that person needs to decide whether that has occurred or not. If I can only share my experience from my point of view, or what my family went through, what I witnessed and how I saw it and what my experience was. That's the same for every single person. Their experience may have been different, right? There's things that happened to me that didn't happen to other Sea Organization members. It's the same for all of us. There are similarities in our experiences, but some of them are still very different. And we all come out of those experiences differently because we are different people. We're going to respond differently to things outside of Scientology or things inside of Scientology, based on where we came from, based on who we are, based on what our own beliefs are. And we're going to heal from that in different ways at different speeds. So I think I get what you're saying. I've not watched a ton of Serge's videos, but I know the pain is there. What happened to him was horrific. Children have no place in the Sea Organization, and that he is standing up for that is amazing and fantastic. And I love seeing him at these different protests in Hollywood outside the testing center. Now, to the part of your question about calling Mike Rinder out on it, is it helpful or not helpful? I don't know. All I know is this. And I'm only speaking for me. If I hold on to or held on to a lot of the things that, or if I wasn't able to let them go and let people be, let them handle their own crap, I think I would be a lot worse off as far as where I've gotten in my healing. There's still more to be done. There is still more to be done. I think there always will be. I think that's what life is. Even if you've never been in Scientology, you go through experiences that kind of have a tendency to define you. And if they were negative experiences at some point, you work through that. But it doesn't mean that pain and those effects aren't still there. I personally don't come from a place where I think that hammering on somebody who, I mean, let's just talk about it. Mike Rinder left Scientology. What was it? When did he escape? 2007, 2009, whatever it was. He has been a big whistleblower and a huge part of the movement to expose Scientology. He has brought a lot of validity to that movement because he was the spokesperson for Scientology. As the spokesperson for Scientology, as the head of the Office of Special Affairs, did he do some stuff? Yeah. He'll be the first one to tell you. A lot of people, I think, that are newer to being exposed to Scientology in this movement don't have an entire history of some of the people who came before to whistleblow about Scientology and to go to the authorities about Scientology. There's a lot that he's done because he was a spokesperson for Scientology. Anyone who is a long-term Scientologist who finds out that Mike Rinder is no longer in Scientology and he's speaking out about it, that is impactful, hugely impactful. So he continues there's a place there and a role there, and he's continued to do things to help end Scientology and their tax exempt status. Has he done enough to atone for what he did? I don't know. That's not for me to decide. And I'm not here to pass judgment on people that you haven't atoned enough. You haven't apologized enough. Who am I? Nobody. That's not for me. That's for the person. Somebody could come along and be like, "Well, Natalie, you didn't do enough to make this up to your children, the fact that you even let them be exposed to Scientology." I would say F you to that if somebody came at me like that. Because did I expose my children to Scientology? Yes. I was born and raised in Scientology. Did I get my children out of Scientology? I did. Did I do some crazy things to get my children out of Scientology? I did. At least Scientology would see it that way. So it's, I get where he's coming from his point of view and where he comes from. And I wouldn't even fault him for it. With Serge, he is fighting a battle that needs to be fought in terms of the focus on getting the children out of the Sea Organization, that you cannot consent. You should not have 12-year-olds joining the Sea Organization. All of this is valid. I'm kind of, I'm rambling here now about this, but I think you kind of get the point. And if you have more questions about that, just go ahead and ask me. But I love seeing Serge out there. He is just, I don't even know him, but from what I see, he has a beautiful, beautiful heart. And he's standing up for children that don't have a voice, and children who grow up and who maybe aren't to the point yet where they're going to share what happened or be willing to talk about it. We've all had different experiences. At the same time, I think what Mike Rinder has done so far has been a lot, and he's continuing to do it. And I'm not going to fault him for that. And I'm not going to slam him for that. It's just not for me to judge. So there we go. Lynn, I'm sorry. I don't think I saw a previous question. Feel free to pop it in there now because we are going to get wrapped up. But hopefully you still have that question. Kieran, did I say that? Kieran63, do you think it's possible that Shelley became pregnant and she was whisked away to groom the child from birth to take over for DM? I love that narrative. I don't think so. I would probably say no, but oh my gosh, wouldn't that be something? I keep saying, I think people need to write some cult fan fiction about Scientology and fill in the blanks. What's the narrative? What's the story? You tell me. What happened to Shelley? Where is she? What happened to Xenu? What happens to the body thetans? I'm here for all of it. I want to hear about it. That's actually a great question. Eagle Eye, thank you. All right, with my rambling, I have fallen behind a little bit. That would be something to see, though. But, God, that would be funny in a very interesting way. But I don't, you know what? And it would have gotten out. It would have gotten out. I don't think that that's a secret that they can get away from. Okay, Bev, me too. Why did Mike Rinder take the reins away from Aaron in the Aftermath Foundation? Aaron in the Aftermath program. So you mean he was a board member on the Aftermath Foundation, and why did he get voted off the board? All I can say, you'd have to ask the people that did it. I think that in my opinion, this is just me. I think it would be very beneficial to the Aftermath Foundation to have a board made up of more diverse members. And I mean diverse in every sense of the word, including people who've never been in Scientology. Because y'all got an amazing point of view on this, and you have a way of seeing through things that sometimes we can't. I will be the first to admit, after 35 years in Scientology and in the Sea Organization, I'm 13 years out. I am still shedding that cult culture and Scientology mentality sometimes. I have moments where, boom, there's my cult. My cult is showing, my Scientology is showing. Few and far between these years, but sometimes you don't even identify it that way. It becomes so much of, how you operate. It's a habit. So people who've never been in Scientology don't have that. You're able to see it without any kind of a filter that way. And that point of view is so incredibly valuable. I think that there should be people never in Scientology on the board. I think there should be people who are trained in mental health and social services. They could add to that. People who are from diverse backgrounds, so that it's not all the same, because I believe that when you live in an echo chamber of just one way of thinking, that you're limited in your ability to interact with a larger audience or a larger community or be able to help more people. So I think adding more diversity to a board like that would allow for them to help more people. That's all. And there should be more than one foundation, and there will be because Aaron's going ahead and starting one. There should be, because there are going to be some people who leave the Sea organization who were there for a long time that could react in one of two ways. When they come out and realize that the people that they're going to go get help from are people who are senior to them in the Sea organization, that might intimidate them. But it also can have the opposite effect where they're like, oh my gosh, that person left. It pulls them out even faster. So different strokes for different folks. There has to be different points of view, and there has to be more than one foundation to help more people. And there are going to be people who relate more to the current Aftermath Foundation board, and there are going to be people who relate more to people from different backgrounds. So I think as many people, as many foundations as we can get, the better. Okay, Lynn, I think I see your question here. Why hasn't someone taken out DM? Because it's illegal and no one wants to go to prison, and nobody should be doing that. That is such a, well, let's just say that. It's just completely illegal, and doing something like that is not, it's not a solution for anything. And honestly, somebody else is just going to take over. It's just, nobody should be doing that. Q Blue 64. Every time you say mortified, I think my mom, she used that saying. She would have loved your talks. Love your morning talks. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's one of my favorite descriptive words. That's mortifying. I'm mortified by that. All right, let's just see here. Yeah, I just want to really make a point there. I don't wish violence on anybody. That is not a solution. Violence, causing trouble for the sake of causing trouble, causing disturbance, just those are things, that's what Scientology would do. That's their mentality. We're talking about people who are out there and who are exposing the abuses that have happened, who are trying to open eyes and open hearts, not physically harm anyone. I have a hard line on that. I don't condone or wish violence on anybody. That's just not an answer. I love your answers to some of the questions from some of you. Yeah, Bev, you make a good point. Judgment is left to God of your choice. Yeah. Thank you. Yep, Dip Me in Glitter. Remember to always be kind to everyone and always give all of us love in your own ways. Yes, I think it's totally possible. We're doing it right now to be able to have dialogue and conversation about different points of view where different people come from. It doesn't mean that there's no black and white thinking here. That's very much cult mentality, that it's either this way or that way. That there are many more options. There's third, fourth, fifth options. This is not anything where anyone has to take any type of side. There are no sides. It is, I think when you become very clear on like what my goal is with all of this is to raise awareness about Scientology, about the abuses within Scientology so that they lose their tax exempt status and no longer have the money and power to do what they do when it comes to harming people. If somebody wants to practice Scientology outside of that without the abuses, I don't care. I don't care if you worship rocks, if that's your thing. You do it. That's not for me to judge or me to choose. And there's such freedom in being able to do that and discuss it too. There's not just one way. And someone can look at something too and see it as evil, and someone else won't see it as evil. Who's right? It depends on where you're standing, right? 5 people will see the same accident. You can get 5 different stories about what happened. Does that mean that they're all wrong or one is wrong and one is right? No, from where they're standing, that's the truth. So it's not for me, and I think anybody else, to say that somebody is right about this or wrong about it. We will, right? We all have opinions about something, but that's okay. It's not one or the other. It's not black or white. That is a very slippery slope into cult mentality that I know I want to avoid. I rather be more open to different points of view, whether I agree with them or not. In fact, I'm sometimes more interested in the ones that maybe I don't agree with, because it might help me understand how that person got there. Or because again, it's not black or white, or at least it's not for me. Not anymore. It used to be. It was for 35 years. And look where that type of thinking got me. It got me trapped in a cult. So, one thing I have learned since leaving Scientology, if you do the same thing, you're going to get the same result. When I left Scientology, I wanted a different life. I wanted freedom. I wanted happiness. So I couldn't do the same thing, which means I couldn't think the same way. I had to change how I thought. And that took me many, many, many years, because sometimes when you've been indoctrinated in only one way of thinking, sometimes it helps to have other options to explore and understand. And that's why I have a special place in my heart for all of you who've never been in Scientology, because you helped me do that. You have these different points of views, not through the lens of Scientology. And I can look at it and go, oh, yeah, that was super culty. Or yeah, I see that, how that's totally human trafficking. Some of these things are not things that I saw that way before, because when you're in it, you don't see it as being abusive. And the beauty of it is you get to choose, but we don't have to choose one over the other on anything. And I definitely don't. I'm not about that life. Pearl. Why and what do the whales get when they give money? A tax deduction. That is the biggest thing. And status. These big, beautiful awards, being able to shake hands with Dictator Dave. That is a big thing. People get like super hard for that. I mean, it's just, he is their cult leader. It is a very exciting thing to be able to be in his presence. And when you donate enough money, you get to. So that's what I think that it is. So it's, oh my gosh, we've been going on. Why didn't nobody tell me what time it was? No wonder I'm so hungry. Did not mean to go on this long, but shoot me your questions. You know my email. Go ahead in the comments if you're catching this on the replay. Let's talk about, I have a whole list of things that I want to go through. I'm going to be catching up on everything happening with the different protests. And if you catch things that you think we should share on this recap, please send them to me at natalie@tonkatalk.com. In the meantime, I hope that you all have the most amazing cult-free day.